At first, everything seemed fine. Rachel and I had been married for 6 years, and I thought we were doing okay. I'm an architect, so my job keeps me busy, but we always made an effort to stay close. Or at least, I thought we did. That was, until I started noticing small changes. Late nights, her phone glued to her hand, and messages that made her smile in a way that felt off. Whenever I'd ask, she'd just shrug it off, saying it was work stuff. You know that gut feeling, the one that tells you something's wrong? Well, mine hit me like a punch to the stomach. But I convinced myself I was just overthinking it, that I was being paranoid. Then it happened. I'll never forget it. I was standing by the window, sipping on a beer after a long day, when I saw Jordan, the guy she worked with, pull up in front of our house. He leaned out of his car window, flashing that cocky smile of his, and Rachel leaned right in. And then they kissed. Not a quick peck on the cheek. Not anything casual. It was right on the lips. I froze. I stood there, bottle in hand, staring as if I had somehow misinterpreted what I had just seen. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe that's just how they said goodbye at work, right? But deep down, I knew that kiss wasn't just some innocent gesture. Something was going on. The woman I thought I knew was slipping away, and I had no idea what to do about it. It was messing with my head. One minute, I'd convince myself I was overreacting, but the next, I'd be sure something was being hidden from me. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and honestly, how do you even bring something like that up to your wife? Hey, did you kiss Jordan on the lips today? Without sounding completely crazy? So, I decided to talk to Lily, her stepsister. Lily and Rachel were close, but Lily and I got along well too. She's sharp, direct, and always had my back when things with Rachel got weird. If anyone could help me figure out what was going on, it was her. So, I called her. Something's going on with Rachel, I said, pacing around my living room, the phone pressed to my ear. I could hear her lighting a cigarette. She's been acting strange, working late, always on her phone. I hesitated, and I saw her kiss Jordan. There was no hesitation on Lily's end. You saw what? She asked, clearly surprised. I filled her in on everything. Late nights, the secretive texts, and that kiss I had witnessed. After a moment of silence, I could hear her exhale a long stream of smoke. Listen, Ethan, she said, her voice low. You're not crazy. I've noticed it too. She's been distant, even with me. Something's definitely not right. That was all I needed to hear. I wasn't losing my mind. Lily offered to help me get to the bottom of it. She suggested we keep an eye on Rachel, see what she was really up to. At first, I wasn't sure about following her around. It felt sneaky, desperate. But what choice did I have? I had to know the truth. Lily, though, was oddly eager about it. We'll play it smart, she said. Just a couple of days. See where she goes, who she's with. No harm in that, right? I could tell she was enjoying the idea of catching Rachel, though I wasn't sure if it was out of genuine concern for me or because she had her own issues with her sister. Either way, I needed her help, and she was willing to give it. The first day we trailed Rachel was intense. We parked across from her office, waiting to see if Jordan would show up. My hands were sweating on the wheel, and I couldn't sit still. Lily was calm as ever, scrolling through her phone. Relax, Ethan, she said, smirking. You look like you're about to have a heart attack. How are you so calm? I muttered, wiping my palms on my jeans. Because this is how you get answers, she replied matter-of-factly. If she's cheating, better to know now than later. It was easier for her to say. She wasn't the one watching his whole world start to unravel. Every time the office door opened, my heart would jump. And then, finally, there they were, Rachel and Jordan, walking out together, laughing like everything was just fine. My stomach twisted as I watched them get into his car. We followed them at a distance, my mind racing. Was I overreacting? Was this just some innocent office friendship? Or was my wife betraying me in ways I couldn't even fathom? Lily kept me grounded. Don't jump to conclusions, she said. We need proof, not just feelings. It was easy for her to say. She wasn't the one watching her marriage fall apart. We followed them to a small cafe across town, where they sat at a table by the window. Their heads were close, and they were talking quietly, their body language too familiar, too intimate. From where we were parked, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I didn't need to. The way they looked at each other said it all. It wasn't just a casual chat. It was way too close. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Lily rested a hand on my arm. "We'll figure this out," she said softly. "Whatever happens, you're not alone." I nodded, but inside, I felt like everything I knew was slipping away. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I loved, was fading, and I was powerless to stop it. When we finally called it a day, Lily suggested we go to her apartment to unwind. "I don't want to go home yet," I said, and she agreed. We sat on her couch, shared a bottle of wine, and tried to make sense of it all. Lily surprised me by opening up. She confessed she'd always felt like she was second best compared to Rachel. No matter what she did, Rachel always seemed to come out on top. "Funny how things turn out," she said, swirling her wine. "Looks like Rachel's not so perfect after all." We both laughed, but it was bitter. That kind of laugh you have when you realize your world is falling apart, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. As I lay awake on Lily's couch that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to change forever. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. The next few days passed in a blur of coffee-fueled stakeouts and sleepless nights. I was running on pure adrenaline, each moment more desperate than the last, trying to catch Rachel in the act. Lily was calm, collected, like she was just watching a movie while I was hanging by a thread, barely keeping it together. We spent hours trailing Rachel and Jordan, always staying a safe distance behind. Watching them meet at places that made my chest tighten, cafes, restaurants, bars. I never imagined this would be my life. Yet, here I was, playing detective in my own marriage, with Lily as my reluctant partner. Then, one night, it all came to a head. We followed them to a dimly lit restaurant on the far side of town. Through the window, I saw Rachel's fingers brush against Jordan's hand. They leaned in close, speaking in low voices. I could feel my blood pressure rise as their faces came too close for comfort. My throat went dry as I saw them kiss again. But this wasn't like the quick peck I'd seen outside our house. No, this kiss was different. It was slow, intentional, full of meaning. It was the kind of kiss that spoke volumes without a word being said. My stomach turned, and I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that this was it. No more wondering. No more pretending. She was cheating. I sat there, frozen, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from shattering into pieces. Lily stayed silent, her hand resting on my arm, trying to anchor me to the moment. But it didn't help. The ache in my chest felt like a physical weight, pressing down on me. "I'm sorry, Ethan," Lily whispered, as if she was apologizing on behalf of Rachel. But I couldn't bear it anymore. "Let's go," I muttered, barely able to get the words out. We drove away in silence, the air thick with the weight of what we had just witnessed. The drive back to Lily's apartment was eerie in its quietness, interrupted only by the occasional sigh from Lily or the sound of gravel crunching under the tires. My mind raced, but all I could think of was Rachel. The memories of our time together, the laughter, the trips, the late-night talks, felt like they belonged to someone else. Now, all I could picture was her with another man, sharing a kiss like it meant something. When we got back to Lily's apartment, I felt drained. Empty. She opened a bottle of wine, handed me a glass, and we sank into the couch, both of us exhausted, but neither of us knowing how to face what we'd just learned. "We'll figure it out," Lily said quietly, but her words didn't bring any comfort. It was like she was just saying what I needed to hear. I drank deeply, the burn of the alcohol doing little to numb the ache inside me. "This isn't supposed to be how it is," I muttered, mostly to myself. Lily leaned back, swirling her wine, a distant look in her eyes. "You know," she said after a pause, "I've always felt like I was living in Rachel's shadow. No matter what I did, she always seemed to get the attention." I looked at her, surprised by the rawness in her voice. It wasn't just about helping me anymore. This betrayal had affected her, too, in its own way. We weren't just dealing with Rachel's cheating. We were facing years of emotional baggage, unspoken truths, and long-standing resentments. "Guess we're both screwed," I said with a bitter laugh, trying to make light of it, but failing. Lily gave me a sad smile, the kind you give when you're so worn down that crying doesn't even seem like an option anymore. We kept drinking, the tension between us thickening. Somewhere between the second and third glass of wine, I felt something shift. It started small, a lingering glance, the accidental brush of her hand against mine. We were two broken people, clinging to each other like survivors in the wreckage of our lives, desperate for anything that would give us a sense of relief, even if it was fleeting. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were kissing. It wasn't planned. It wasn't thought out. It was messy, hungry, and desperate. But in that moment, it was the only thing that made any sense. Nothing else mattered. Not the pain, not the betrayal, not the anger. It all disappeared as the whirlwind of emotions took over. The rest of the night was a blur. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. It was one of those nights where words were useless, and all we had was each other. When I woke up the next morning, tangled in the sheets with Lily beside me, everything came rushing back. I felt sick. What had I done? Lily stirred, rubbed her eyes, and met my gaze. There was no regret in her eyes, just a shared understanding that neither of us could undo what had happened. "Let's not make a big deal out of this," she said, her voice groggy but calm. I nodded, grateful for her nonchalance. "Yeah, just a mistake," I muttered, though the words didn't sit right. We agreed to leave it behind us, to chalk it up to exhaustion and too much alcohol. But deep down, I knew it would never be the same. We'd crossed a line, and there was no going back from that. I left her apartment that morning with my head spinning, my heart heavy with guilt. It wasn't just about Rachel anymore. It was about the mess I'd made trying to process her betrayal. The worst part? I didn't even know who I was angrier with, Rachel, for destroying everything, or myself, for letting this happen with Lily. As I drove home, the weight of everything pressed down on me. Rachel had shattered our marriage, but in trying to pick up the pieces, I had made it worse. I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing myself, too. And this was only the beginning. I hit my breaking point. Keeping Rachel's betrayal a secret felt like poison in my veins, and I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't going to let her keep pretending everything was fine while I fell apart. No way. She wanted to kiss Jordan in public, act like she could have her cake and eat it, too? Fine. But I was done being the fool. I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth. It only took about an hour to pull together everything we'd collected. Photos of her with Jordan, laughing, holding hands, sitting too close at a table, and of course, that damn kiss that had ruined everything. My hands were shaking as I compiled the photos, the texts, the timestamps. It was a sick kind of adrenaline driving me now. I opened up our group chat with mutual friends. You know, the one where Rachel used to post pictures of our vacations and anniversaries like we were the perfect couple. It took about 5 minutes before the chat went crazy. "Is this real? Holy shit, that's Rachel?" The reactions were immediate. Shock, disgust, disbelief. Rachel's picture-perfect image as the loving wife, the responsible co-worker, was destroyed in an instant. There was no going back. By the end of the day, Rachel was the hottest topic in town. People were whispering behind her back, texting me for more details, speculating about how it all went wrong. I caught wind of what was happening through the grapevine. Jordan, that coward, had completely distanced himself from Rachel as soon as he realized his career could be in jeopardy. The moment he saw that things were getting messy, he wasn't willing to risk his reputation for her. And just like that, she was left holding the bag, with no one to blame but herself. Then came the phone calls. Rachel relentlessly bombarded my phone, calling and calling, but I refused to answer. So, she switched to texting. "Miles, we need to talk. Why would you do this to me? You've ruined everything." Each message only added fuel to the fire. I didn't ruin anything. She did that all on her own. All I did was make sure the truth was out. But in her mind, she was the wrong party, and I was the villain. Typical. After a few days of silence, she showed up at my door, pounding on it like she had the right. I opened it just enough to see her, but I didn't let her in. "You had no right," she spat, eyes blazing with anger. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, keeping my cool. "Yeah, Rachel. I gave you exactly what you earned. Her face twisted with rage. You ruined everything. I lost Jordan. I lost my friends. I have nothing now. I let out a short, humorless laugh. You destroyed everything the moment you decided to cheat on me behind my back. Don't pin this on me. She stood there, stunned, like she thought I'd beg her to take me back or apologize for exposing her. But not this time. I'd spent too long being the fool. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking I regretted any of it. That conversation was the end of everything. There was no marriage left to save, and I knew it. The next day, I filed for divorce. I made it clear in the paperwork, there was no coming back. No second chances. I was done. Meanwhile, Rachel kept trying to reach Lily, calling her constantly, leaving voicemails, even sending flowers in some pathetic attempt to make things right. But Lily wasn't having any of it. She blocked every call, ignored every text. The bond they once shared as sisters was completely shattered, torched by Rachel's betrayal and everything that followed. Weeks later, Owen, a mutual friend who thought he could fix things, set up a meeting to clear the air. I only agreed because I had one thing left to say, and then I was done. We met at a bar, and as soon as Rachel laid eyes on me, she went on the attack. You think you're so righteous, don't you? She hissed, leaning across the table, her voice dripping with venom. You're not the victim here, Miles. You're just a pathetic little coward who couldn't handle being in a boring relationship. I kept my voice steady, though I was fighting to stay calm. You're the one who cheated, Rachel. You don't get to rewrite the story to make yourself look better. She opened her mouth to fire back, but Jordan, sitting a few stools away, interrupted. Look, Rachel, he muttered, sounding uncomfortable. There was nothing serious between us. You were just looking for something. That's all it ever was. Rachel's face turned ghostly pale. Why? She asked, her voice cracking. You knew what it was, Jordan shrugged, like he couldn't care less. You were just bored. It wasn't meant to be anything. Get over it. I couldn't help but smile as I watched her unravel. She'd thrown away everything we had for this? A fling with a guy who couldn't even stand by her when things went south? Pathetic. Rachel shot me a look full of hate, but I didn't flinch. This is on you, I said, my voice cool. Not me, not Lily, and definitely not Jordan. You made your bed, Rachel. With that, the argument ended, Rachel storming out, humiliated and alone. Owen tried to smooth things over, but I waved him off. There was nothing left to discuss. I had exposed the truth and filed for divorce. I was drawing my line in the sand. Later that night, sitting in my empty living room, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It wasn't happiness, but it was close enough. Rachel's betrayal no longer weighed me down like a chain around my neck. It was just a chapter in my life, and I was ready to move on. A few months later, after the divorce was finalized and things seemed to settle down, Lily hit me with something I hadn't seen coming. We were sitting in her apartment, which had become a bit of a refuge for me in the months since the divorce. It wasn't exactly dating, but we weren't just friends anymore either. It was complicated, and we both knew it. Then she dropped the bomb. Miles, I need to tell you something, she said, her voice tight, like she'd been holding onto the words for days. I set my coffee down, concern flooding through me. What's going on? Lily took a deep breath, eyes locked on mine. I'm pregnant. The world seemed to tilt for a moment. I leaned back, trying to process what she had just said. Pregnant? Are you? Yeah, she nodded, her face serious. It's yours. For a second, I couldn't process it. Not because I doubted her, but because the thought of becoming a father with Lily of all people was something I had never prepared for. I sat there, speechless, as the realization sank in. But once the shock wore off, a different feeling emerged. Responsibility, instinct, something that kicked in almost immediately. How do you feel? I asked quietly, still grappling with the news. She shrugged, a mix of fear and excitement crossing her face. Scared, mostly. I didn't plan this. I'm not sure I'm ready to be a mom. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't exactly Father of the Year material myself. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to abandon her or the baby. I'd already been through betrayal, and I wasn't about to put Lily through the same. I've got your back, I said, meaning every word. We'll figure this out. Lily gave me a small, relieved smile. Thanks, Miles. But the peace didn't last long. Once word of the pregnancy got out, Rachel caught wind of it, and that's when all hell broke loose. It started with a late-night phone call. I picked up without looking at the screen, and Rachel's voice crackled through, seething with rage. "You've got to be kidding me," she screamed. "Lily? What the hell were you thinking?" I let out a slow breath, trying to keep calm. "What I do is none of your business, Rachel." "You've got to be kidding me, Miles. She's my sister. You've completely destroyed everything." Rachel's voice was sharp, full of venom. I couldn't help but laugh, but it was bitter, empty. "No, Rachel, you ruined everything. You tossed it all away the moment you started fooling around with Jordan. Don't you dare try to act like you're the victim here." But Rachel wasn't backing down. "She took you from me, Miles. You owe me. After everything we went through. After all the years we spent together." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. Loyalty? From the woman who'd obliterated our marriage without a second thought? I could feel my blood boiling. I clenched my jaw, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles went white. Loyalty? Are you serious, Rachel? You don't get to talk to me about loyalty, not after everything you've done. It's unbelievable. I could almost hear her hissing through the phone. "You'll regret this, Miles." Before she could continue, I ended the call. There was no point in trying to reason with someone who couldn't face the truth. Things started to spiral even faster after that. The next day, Rachel showed up at Lily's place, uninvited and unannounced. I wasn't around, but Lily filled me in later, describing how Rachel stormed in, face flushed red with rage, shaking with fury, and throwing accusations like bullets. "You backstabbing little bitch," Rachel screamed. "How could you do this to me? You took my husband." Lily didn't flinch. She stood there, calm, arms crossed. "You're the one who cheated on him, Rachel. You wrecked your own life. Don't try to blame me for your mess." Rachel's face twisted into a snarl. "You were supposed to be my sister. You've betrayed me in every way possible. And what about Miles? What do you think you've done to him?" Lily shot back without missing a beat. "You think you deserve sympathy after everything you put him through? No, Rachel. You don't get to be the victim here." Their argument escalated, growing louder and more vicious. All the old grudges, all the resentment from years of rivalry and bitterness, came pouring out in a flood. They tore into each other, dredging up every insult, every wound that had been buried over time. It felt like watching a volcano erupt, the fury and hatred spilling over. Finally, Lily's voice cut through the chaos, cold as ice. "I'm done with you. Don't call me, don't text me, don't show up here again. We're finished." Rachel just stared at her, stunned for a moment, before storming out, slamming the door so hard it shook the walls. That was the last time they spoke. Whatever bond they had left was completely shattered, gone in the wake of betrayal. Lily tried to act tough, like she wasn't affected by it all, but I could see the toll it took on her. It was like she was carrying the weight of that fight on her shoulders, even if she kept it hidden. And as her pregnancy progressed, the stress started to get to her. One night, curled up next to me on the couch, she whispered, "I don't know if I can do this. What if I'm not good enough to be a mom?" I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her closer. "You're going to be great. You've got this. And I'll be right here with you the whole time." She gave me a small, uncertain smile, but the fear was still there, buried deep inside. I couldn't blame her. Hell, I was scared out of my mind too. But there was no way I was going to let her face this alone. To try to make things a little easier, I bought her a new apartment, a better one, closer to the city, with enough room for the baby. It wasn't much, but it was my way of showing her that I was all in now. This wasn't just some fling or rebound. I was serious, and I was going to make sure she and the baby had everything they needed. As we started settling in, I couldn't help but reflect on how insane everything had become in such a short time. One day, I was a married guy with a stable life, and the next, I was a single dad-to-be, tangled up in a messy relationship with my ex-wife's sister. It wasn't the life I'd imagined, but it was the life I had now, and I was determined to make the most of it. Meanwhile, Rachel was left behind, consumed by bitterness and anger, completely cut off from everyone she'd once called family. And honestly, it felt like justice to me. Starting over with Lily was like stepping into a foreign country, unfamiliar and full of uncertainties. We had each other, but that didn't make everything easy. If anything, it made things a hell of a lot more complicated. The whispers started almost immediately. Rachel, her family, and even some of our so-called friends began to talk. To them, I was the villain. The guy who left his wife and ended up with her sister. Never mind the fact that Rachel was the one who had cheated. People have a funny way of twisting things when they're not living the mess themselves. One night, Lucas, an old buddy of mine, asked me over a couple of beers, "You really think this thing with Lily is going to last?" His tone was a mix of genuine curiosity and judgment, as if he was waiting for me to admit it was all a mistake. "It's not just some fling, Lucas. It's my life," I shot back, sharper than I meant to. "And if you can't deal with that, maybe we shouldn't keep doing this." He put his hands up, feigning surrender. All right. I'm just saying, man. People are talking. People are always talking. That's what happens when your life turns into a soap opera." Rachel's family cut me off completely, but honestly, I didn't care. What stung more was how many people seemed more concerned with appearances than with the truth. Even some of the friends we'd known for years backed away, claiming our relationship was just a rebound or doomed from the start. The truth was, it wasn't just external pressure. Lily and I had our own struggles to face. Every so often, Lily would look at me like she was waiting for me to change my mind, to say I still loved Rachel, or that being with her was a mistake. And I'd be lying if I said those doubts didn't cross my mind, especially late at night when the silence made everything feel heavier than it was. But no matter what, there was no going back. That bridge was burned, and even if it hadn't been, I had no interest in rebuilding it. Lily's pregnancy wasn't smooth sailing, either. The morning sickness hit her hard, and there were nights when I had to hold her hair back while she was sick. She was exhausted all the time, her emotions everywhere, and more than once, she broke down, convinced she was going to screw it all up. "I can't do this," she sobbed one night, curled up on the couch with a pillow against her chest. "What if I'm a terrible mom? What if the baby hates me?" "You're going to be great," I told her, pulling her close. "We've got this. We're in it together." She gave me a shaky smile, but I could still see the fear lurking behind her eyes. And it didn't help that money was tighter than I expected. Moving her into the new place, getting ready for the baby. It all drained my savings faster than I planned, and my work had slowed down more than I was comfortable with. We found ourselves cutting back wherever we could. No fancy dinners, no weekend trips, just bills, baby supplies, and the occasional cheap bottle of wine to keep my sanity intact. I even started seeing a therapist. At first, it felt weird, sitting in that quiet office, talking to a stranger. But I knew I needed it. I needed a place to talk about Andre's betrayal, a space where I could let it all out, especially when the weight of it would sneak up on me in those quiet moments. My therapist, her pen hovering over a notepad, asked, "How do you feel about moving forward with Lily?" I paused, giving the question some real thought. "It's complicated," I told her. "Some days, things feel right. But other times, I wonder if we're just two broken people trying to get by." She nodded, not passing judgment, just listening. Slowly, over the course of our sessions, I started to release some of that anger. Not forgive, not exactly, because Rachel hadn't earned that, but I was learning to let go of the bitterness that had stuck to me like a second skin. It was exhausting, carrying that weight around. It wasn't helping anyone, least of all me. And then Rachel made her final move. One day, out of nowhere, she called. She wanted to meet, to talk things over one last time. Her voice was soft, sweet, like we were back in the early days of our marriage. I knew better, but I agreed to meet anyway. Maybe I thought I could get some closure, or maybe I just needed to look her in the eye, to see if there was anything left of the person I once loved. We met at a cafe downtown. When I got there, she was already seated, looking all polished, trying to remind me of the woman I'd fallen for. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I miss you." I crossed my arms, leaning back in my chair. "What do you want, Rachel?" She sighed, her eyes glassy, threatening tears. Can we at least try to fix this? We were good together, Ethan. We can be good again. I shook my head, more tired than anything else. We can't. Too much has happened. It's over. But I still love you, she whispered, leaning toward me. I stayed calm, my voice cold. That doesn't matter anymore. I've moved on. You need to do the same. Her face crumpled for a second, but she quickly forced a bitter smile. You'll regret this, she spat. Lily won't last, and when she leaves, you'll be alone, just like you deserve. I stood up, tossing a few bills onto the table. Goodbye, Rachel. And with that, I walked away, leaving her and everything else behind. Lily and I realized we couldn't stay in the same city. Too many reminders, too many eyes waiting for us to fail. So we made a plan. Find a place in another city, start fresh where no one knew our story. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one. Packing up my old life felt bittersweet. I came across old photos of Rachel and me, reminders of the good times before everything went south. But those memories didn't sting anymore. They were just memories. When the moving day finally arrived, Lily and I loaded up the last of our things into the truck, took one last look at the empty apartment, and hit the road. As the city faded behind us in the rearview mirror, I felt something strange. Relief, hope. For the first time in a long time, the future felt like ours. No more Rachel, no more drama. Just me, Lily, and the new life we were about to build together. And that was enough. When Lily gave birth to our daughter, everything changed. I thought I understood love and responsibility, but holding that tiny bundle in my arms, it hit me like a freight train. She was perfect. Fragile, loud, and squirming, but perfect. Lily looked exhausted, her hair messy, eyes heavy with sleep deprivation. But in that moment, I'd never seen her more beautiful. We named our daughter Ivy. It wasn't a name we'd planned, but it felt right in the moment, like a fresh start, like something that would grow strong no matter the storm it was born into. Parenthood wasn't easy, though. Sleepless nights, endless diapers, constant crying. It was overwhelming. Some nights, I'd pace the living room with Ivy in my arms, rocking her back and forth while she cried for no reason I could figure out. Lily had her own struggles, trying to balance motherhood with her fear of not measuring up. This is harder than I thought, she admitted one night, tears welling in her eyes as Ivy cried in the background. What if I mess her up? I kissed her forehead, brushing her hair back. We're figuring it out as we go. And you're doing great, Lily. She's lucky to have you. Those early days weren't easy, but eventually, we found a rhythm. Every little milestone, her first smile, her first laugh, felt like a victory. Through it all, Lily and I grew closer. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. Lily didn't just adjust to being a mom. She rediscovered herself, too. A few months after Ivy was born, she launched her own design business. Watching her balance client meetings with feedings and diaper changes was inspiring. She was confident, determined, in her element. I forgot how much I missed this, she said one night, showing me a project she was working on, an interior redesign for a local cafe. It feels good to be doing something for myself again. I smiled, watching her talk passionately about her work. I'm proud of you, Lily. You're killing it. Life wasn't perfect. We still had our share of arguments and tough days, but it felt real. It felt like we were building something worthwhile. And with each passing day, the weight of the past lifted a little more. Rachel still crossed my mind from time to time, but it wasn't painful anymore. It was more like a faded scar, a reminder of what I'd been through. I knew I couldn't keep holding on to that anger. It wasn't serving me. So, one quiet afternoon, as Ivy napped and the house was finally still, I made a decision. I wouldn't hold on to Rachel anymore. Not for her sake, but for mine. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what she did. It was about setting myself free. I didn't want to be the guy who spent the rest of his life bitter and angry. I wanted to move forward, to build something meaningful with Lily and Ivy. A few weeks after that realization, Lily and I made a promise. We sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Ivy peacefully sleeping inside her crib. I took her hand, my fingers lacing through hers. We've been through a lot, I said, squeezing her hand gently. Lily smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. Yeah, we have. I don't want the past following us around anymore, I told her. Let's leave it behind, once and for all. She looked up at me, determination in her eyes. Deal. And just like that, we let it go. All the anger, all the resentment, all the mistakes. We left it all behind. One of our favorite things to do as a family was walk along the beach. Something about the ocean, the endless waves, the salty breeze, felt cleansing, like it was washing away everything we'd been through. On a cool autumn morning, we found ourselves walking hand in hand along the shore, Ivy snug in her stroller, cooing quietly as the waves lapped at the sand. The sun was just rising, casting a warm glow across the water. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt at peace. What do you think the future holds for us? Lily asked, glancing at me with a playful smile. I thought for a moment before shrugging. I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. Lily chuckled softly, squeezing my hand. Me too. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the waves and the soft creak of the stroller wheels over the sand. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel uncertain or terrifying. It felt full of possibilities. Betrayal had broken me once. It had shattered the life I thought I wanted. But it also brought me to this moment, the life I now have, with Lily by my side and Ivy in my arms. Standing there on the beach, I realized something important. Life isn't about avoiding the storms. It's about learning to dance in the rain, finding beauty in the mess. And standing there with Lily and Ivy, I knew one thing for sure. I was exactly where I was supposed to be,